Good morning. On May 27th, 2016, Ms. Heard walked into a courthouse in Los Angeles, California to get a no-notice ex parte restraining order against Mr. Depp, and in doing so, ruined his life by falsely telling the world that she was a survivor of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp. Today, on May 27th, 2022, exactly 6 years later, we ask you to give Mr. Depp his life back by telling the world that Mr. Depp is not the abuser Ms. Heard said he is, and hold Ms. Heard accountable for her lies. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you probably know by now, my name is Camiel Fásquez. On behalf of Mr. Depp and all my colleagues at Brown Rudnick, I want to thank you deeply for your time and your service over these last 7 weeks. We understand that it probably has not been convenient for you to be here every day, and we are so grateful for your time and careful consideration of the evidence as you deliberate. After weeks of sitting in this courtroom, listening to testimony and looking at evidence, now it's time for you, the jury, to come to a decision. You have been entrusted with a serious task. What is at stake in this trial is a man's good name. Even more than that, what is at stake at this trial is a man's life. The life that he lost when he was accused of a heinous crime, and the life he could live when he is finally vindicated. Exactly 6 years ago today, on May 27th, 2016, Ms. Heard walked into court and filed a false report of domestic abuse against her husband of 15 months, Johnny Depp. The scene was a setup. She tipped off the paparazzi so they would be waiting. They knew exactly where she would pause, which side of her face to photograph. And the photos captured what she wanted them to see, the image of a battered woman. What the paparazzi did not know is that the dark mark on her face mysteriously appeared 6 days after last seeing Mr. Depp. It was a lie. She knew it, Mr. Depp knew it, and the multiple witnesses you heard from who saw her that week of May 21st, 2016, also knew it. But the world only saw what she wanted them to see. Two years later, when promoting the biggest role of her career until this trial, Ms. Heard presented herself to the world as a public figure representing domestic abuse. The headline of the op-ed featured the term sexual violence, even though she had never before accused her ex-husband of such a heinous crime. Ms. Heard and her lawyers love to remind you of how the op-ed did not mention Mr. Depp by name, but Ms. Heard made sure that there would be no mistake about who she was referring to. She inserted 2 years ago, so the world would remember the photo of a battered woman, the mark on her face, standing outside the courthouse, and they would once again see Mr. Depp as the villain, this time in full swing of the Me Too movement. But what was happening behind closed doors was quite different from what Ms. Heard presented to the world. The exact opposite, in fact. There is an abuser in this courtroom, but it is not Mr. Depp. And there is a victim of domestic abuse in this courtroom, but it is not Ms. Heard. The evidence presented at this trial has shown that Ms. Heard is in fact the abuser, and Mr. Depp the abused. As you heard from Mr. Depp and multiple other witnesses that testified under oath at this trial, Mr. Depp experienced persistent verbal, physical, and emotional abuse by Ms. Heard during their relationship. And when their relationship was over, Ms. Heard inflicted the greatest and cruelest injury of all. She publicly and falsely named Mr. Depp as the abuser. Ms. Heard never thought she would be held accountable, never thought that she would have to face her abuser. She never thought she would have her supposed mountain of evidence vetted. She never thought that Mr. Depp would tell you, the jury, and the world that he was the real victim of domestic abuse. She said it in her own words.
You can please tell people that it was a fair fight and see what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them, Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and yes. It's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
At the start of this case, Mr. Chu and I stood before you to give you our opening statements on behalf of Mr. Depp. During that statement, we made promises to you about what the evidence would ultimately show at the end of this trial. We've kept those promises. One of those promises we made was that you would come to understand who Ms. Heard is, that she is a deeply troubled person, violently afraid of abandonment, desperate for attention and approval. And in her relationship with Mr. Depp, she was violent, she was abusive, and she was cruel. You heard from Dr. Shannon Curry, who explained that Ms. Heard suffers from borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. These are disorders that are characterized by anger, sometimes uncontrollable and explosive anger, and a powerful, sometimes desperate need for attention, acceptance, and approval. Fear of abandonment is the deepest fear. A person with these disorders will suffer from dramatically fluctuating moods and can sometimes be violent and aggressive. They can also be charming and likable, but they can be incredibly manipulative and wild. An emotional roller coaster with wild swings, from idolizing their partner to devaluing him. In fact, you saw that when she completed testing with her own forensic psychology expert, Dr. Dawn Hughes. Ms. Heard self-reported that she felt like she had 3 or 4 different personalities, and that sometimes her temper would explode and she'd completely lose control. You heard from multiple witnesses that Ms. Heard can be very pleasant, even charming. But you also heard from multiple witnesses and in audio recordings of Ms. Heard that she can be incredibly aggressive, violent, and cruel. You heard that even from her former assistant, Kate James. Ms. James testified that Ms. Heard would scream, yell, and send her barrages of text messages. In fact, Ms. Heard testified that Ms. James testified that Ms. Heard literally spat in her face. You heard from Ms. Heard's former best friend, Rocky Pennington, that Ms. Heard once hit her when Ms. Pennington did not do her best to meet Ms. Heard's needs. You also heard from Beverly Leonard that she once witnessed Ms. Heard assault her then partner in Seattle Airport in 2009. And you heard from Mr. Depp that Ms. Heard used her sister Whitney as a punching bag, literally and figuratively. You also heard overwhelming evidence from Mr. Depp and the people that were around him and Ms. Heard during their relationship, that Mr. Depp suffered persistent verbal and physical abuse at the hands of Ms. Heard. You've heard evidence from Dr. Curry and the fact witnesses at this trial that Ms. Heard's deepest fear is one of abandonment, being left by Mr. Depp. Mr. Depp's greatest crime in her mind, the fault she confronts him with time and time again, is that he splits. He leaves the fight, especially when Ms. Heard gets physical, and she couldn't stand it when he did. You heard from Ms. Heard yourselves in audio recordings how upsetting it was to her when Mr. Depp would split.
Anytime anything goes wrong, you split. I feel like it's your first thing. And it's unnecessary. It's not always you're splitting because there's blows or because there's yelling or anything. You split most times when I'm still speaking in this volume and nothing has been thrown or hit or anything.
You saw the barrage of text messages she would send when he would